See that? The redness for the first half inch? Yeah, that's all blood. So that was a surprise, and I didn't like it. What's up, people? Top Gun build bike. Okay, so today is not gonna be a boring day. We're gonna get this back together, and we're gonna start putting bodywork on it, because I wanna put stickers on it. Yes, stickers. You know, they're awesome. Here we are. It's cleaned up, generally speaking, pretty well. Did some touching up of the motor and all. It ran really well, so I'm not gonna rebuild the carbs, just gonna go with what we got. Put some new spark plugs in, and the K&N air filters are off. If the camera guy will shift to right there, we cleaned them, and they are drying off, and then of course we're gonna re-oil them after they're dry, and they're gonna go on there right now. So one thing I'm doing is I'm going to start assembling the front area of the engine. If you come here and take a look, I had to put on a new radiator hose here, which I didn't order specially from Kawasaki or all. I literally went and got heater hose, which is the same stuff at AutoZone that fits perfectly fine, or O'Reilly's or whatever. A new hose clamp, and bam, on they go. It wasn't leaking, but they were total trash and garbage and hiding behind headers for 30 years or whatever, so they're a disaster. So replacing that, no big deal. And it's time to put the headers on. The oil cooler, as a note, these are the original lines. They don't scare me that much because they don't really flex or move, but it's got the Vance & Hines exhaust system on, so the headers, instead of going into dual exhaust, they go into single exhaust, which sounds bitchin', but they sort of crowd the oil line when it's on there. So for right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some heat reflective material from Race Car Land. I'll go get it right now. And I'm gonna wrap it around the line where it's close to the header. And frankly, that would probably do a good enough job, but I'm not really into doing things just good enough. So I'm going to get some new oil lines for it. I'd like to, here's the heat reflective material. So I'll cut out a bit of this, and this reflects from radiant heat, and then the backing is insulative and self-adhesive. So I'm gonna put that right around there near the header, and that'll help out. I'm not really worried about it heating up the oil so much as ruining the oil line. And obviously it's been on there for a while, but I don't want it to leave me stranded when I go to dinner with my wife or have some fun on it, clearly. So time to put the headers on. Let's give that a go, shall we? All right. Now, purposely on this bike build, I wanted to do this in a way that there's really nothing magic or special about this build that requires absurd skill. I wanted this to reflect something you could do on a budget. Now, I blew my budget a little bit because I just did. I guess I wanted to be nice, and I spent more money on paint and all. And that was a great thing to do. The lady did an amazing job painting it. So anyway, putting on the headers, I got new seals. They are copper, and they're not solid. They're kind of rolled, so they will smush a little bit to seal best. But what I'm gonna do right now is just take a look and make sure that the original gaskets or sealing rings are not still in the ports, which they are. Here is one of the old ones. You can see, and it's totally smushed and flattened and a disaster. You know, I probably could have assembled it with those things on there, and maybe it wouldn't leak like a sieve, but I doubt it. So just popping these out of the ports, and you know, really what I probably should have removed these right when I took the header off, because as an example, if you were having somebody help you with this, or there were like multiple mechanics, this is one of those easy things that it's easy for somebody that's not terribly observant to miss, because it's, you know, it's very dirty, it's coated with soot over the years and all, and it kind of matches all the other crap that's in there. And if you go stick another gasket in over top of it, it's clearly not gonna seal, and it's gonna be a disaster. And you're gonna have to take half the bike apart just to get to it, and that's really frustrating. And I say that because I used to have a shop, and I used to help make people into better mechanics and work with them, and sometimes in a hurry, and sometimes people would make a mistake, which sucks for the shop and the shop owner, not the guy making the mistake, because you pay the guy making the mistake even though he really shouldn't be paid for that, but that's a whole separate topic. And I'm basically just complaining, and I shouldn't do that. Or should I? What do you think? Should I rant about something? Casey, rant, engage! Okay, so this is gonna go here. Let's see if I can put those gaskets and have them stay in place first. That's probably an intelligent idea. Will they stay in place on their own? That is a no. All right, so this is gonna be annoying. Let me see. If I wanted to hold one of these things in place, and gravity is not trying to be my friend, although it's keeping me on the ground, so I guess it's still my friend, and I'm just being a whiny person. I need to find some real high temp silicone type stuff, not because I want to seal it, but because I want it to stay in place. All right, what do we got here? Red. It's in the tube. Oh, cool, look at me. Wow. It's almost as though I'm not an idiot. I've got a brand new tube of it over yonder. Okay, yeah, higher temp silicone. I'm not so keen on silicone in terms of trying to get it to seal exhaust manifolds that go high temp. You really want to get that stuff to seal on its own with the proper gaskets. This kind of helps for a while in a pinch, and how long it helps has everything to do with how insanely high strung your motor may or may not be. In this circumstance, it's really not that high strung, but it is a bike engine, so they're kind of inherently all higher strung. All right, let's see if this works or I just make a giant mess. And by the end of this video, I want bodywork on. So it's gonna be good. Anyway, also, is it weird that I'm wearing an Air Force hat right now for Naval Aviator movie bike? Uh-oh, I don't know, we're gonna get in trouble. But shout out a fan out there in Navy has invited me to do a Tiger cruise next year. So I'm looking very forward to that. All right, it sticks, yes. All right, what do we got here? All right, so I really don't care about putting it all the way around. I'm not trying to seal anything. I just am gonna put it in place. And it's not noticeable. If any extra comes off on the inside, it'll clearly get burned off and blown out the exhaust. So really no worries here. This is just kind of one of those assembly things that's the so-called necessary evil. But you do want to be mindful when you're doing builds that whatever you choose to do something, or your assembly process or your techniques, are something that work for the long run, that don't detract from your work or craftsmanship, that aren't going to have any side effects. For instance, people that use silicone sealer for making gaskets that relate to anything on the oil, keep in mind that anything that squishes out on the outside, there's potentially the same amount or even more, depending on how you put it on, going out on the inside. And if you have little bits of silicone coming off in oil systems, that can clog very important things and cause you to lose oil pressure or oil flow and blow expensive motors. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, in general, I find that people use silicone sealer way too often with gaskets. I think they use it because they really, really, really want their work to work. But, by the way, you know it's tricky to try to speak intelligently while holding your tongue right, so to speak, working on something like this. But silicone is not as necessary as people make it out to be in using with other gaskets. Back in the day when I used to work on Ferraris, you would just use a tiny dab of silicone glue in the corner of things. So if I remember this correctly, on like 80s Ferraris, yes. So when you take the cam covers off, or valve covers, some people might say, when you're doing, say, like a 308 or 328 valve adjustment, that's also your opportunity to remove, you take the cams out so that you can take the pulleys off of the cams and then remove the seal, the round seal, and the round seal fit within an aluminum boss or ring. And that aluminum, when it bolts, so here's your valve cover surface, here's the head, and they bolt together like this. And so they have this thin gasket, it's kind of like the 944 has back over there for the cam housing, and they come together. So you got this nice surface here, but there's these two little edges. So when you put, I take that back, there's a oil ring on that goes in there. Oh God, I can't even remember. Anyway, long story short, you just put one tiny little dab of silicone glue in one place, not over the whole darn gasket. Okay, moving right along. How much to a dad do I sound like? A lot. All right, so we're gonna get the exhaust system on, gonna get the K&N air filters on, and that'll be looking really good, and it's going to be time to go ahead and put bodywork on. All right, you guys, so I am finalizing tightening down the header. Now, these headers on the bikes, you know, they have a tube and then they have a flange, and then the header flange, not that's on the pipe, is just a free-floating flat piece of metal, and it goes on there. So the reason I bring that up is it's easy to get it cockeyed. So you want to make sure that it seats evenly. so that you have even pressure on the flange on the end of your header tube. And then of course that hopefully it will seal properly on your copper squish gasket. So I'm just finishing this now, and I want to make sure I have a nice even tighten of all of them, especially since I'm being distracted by on camera. Boom, that's on there, that's done. Header is good, okay? So now you'll notice how close this oil cooler gets to the header around here. It's just darn close. So we're gonna actually put that wrapping on right here. Obviously this is on the cool side, but that does make a lot of radiant heat. So something to keep in mind. And later I may try to slightly relocate this. Even a quarter or half inch makes a big deal, but that's gotta fit with the bodywork. So I gotta find the subframe type stuff that holds the radiator. And then of course, the headlight and your gauges and your front bodywork. If I'm not mistaken, this subframe goes mostly vertical right here, will hold the radiator, and of course there's your horn, and the bodywork. This one, let's see here. Yeah, this one goes like this, and will go off the bike that way, and it'll hold the, what do you call it? The bodywork. And I noticed a small spot I missed with the paint on this. Painting framework, especially like this, is always tricky when you're shooting it because it's so easy to miss something no matter how hard you try. Oh, come on, you're not all clogged up. Okay, come here, have a look here. Is this really gonna clog right now? Come on. That stinks. Huh. Welcome to the real world. I was going to talk about the merits of half-decent rattle cans. With rattle can stuff, you got to find something that coats well. The cheaper stuff just doesn't have much in the way of pigment or protection. It's not real good for things. But with this, if you can get something, Rust-Oleum works pretty well with gloss black, and when it's not clogged up, it works decently. But I like it because it's very easy to touch up. You can buy it at any parts store. It's relatively durable, and it does a good job of a lot of things, and you can touch it up. You don't have to magically go mix up some special crazy paint by some professional place and powder coat everything. All you're doing is spending a lot of time and money for no real gain. You know, this is shiny, it looks good, and it's easy to touch up and fix. Powder coating is shiny and looks good, and it's not easy to touch up, and it's not easy to fix. So are you in this for the long haul, or are you just trying to make something look good for a short time and spend a ton of money on it? I'm all about the long haul. Okay, so the thing about keeping all your rattle cans is you have nozzles from other ones, and sometimes you have to rob it from other things. So let's see if this other nozzle I got works. Yay, it works. Yeah, and you can turn them upside down and clean it out sometimes, but you waste aerosol doing that. So it's usually not an issue. You just, you don't worry about it. It's easy to miss some of these nicks. Now, truth be told, this framework is not going to be visible at all. It is going to be buried under bodywork and gauges and everything else. So my directive here, so to speak, with what I'm trying to accomplish is mostly so it looks even and nice and protects it from further corrosion. I'm not trying to be a total freak. I didn't actually sandblast this. There's some very light surface rust on it, but I did clean it off really nicely of any kind of grease, wax, and contaminants, and scuff it with wire brushes and stuff. So this is gonna last a long darn time. And since the bike is now vintage and not gonna be stored outside improperly, like it clearly was before, it's really not gonna be a problem. This is one of those things of like, good enough. And I know there's gonna be a bunch of people out there that are like, I gasp! You mean Casey didn't take this to a magical media blaster and have some exotic walnut shells to blast it so it's perfect? And then paint it with some magical thing that cost too much? No, I didn't. I shot paint on it and it's gonna be just fine. All right, not bad. Okay, so this one I'm not ready to put on. This is gonna be my second one, which is good because I need this to dry. So I'm gonna take it over here and I'm gonna stick it in the general vicinity of this hot air that's moving around to clean off the air filters because there's air movement. Okay, so let's look at the framework for the radiator. And frankly, I don't remember how this all went on exactly. I do remember that I had to put on the headers first. I had a helper helping me with this, but he sort of bailed. And now I gotta remember how stuff goes. And no, we didn't take pictures of it. So I get to use deductive reasoning to figure out where stuff goes. And I'm guessing, so that goes up there clearly. Yeah, okay, this looks like it attaches to the, okay, so there's the mounts for the oil cooler. That makes total sense. So this appears that it attaches here, is what I'm guessing. But what I'm wondering, does this attach to the frame? It really looks like it does. Oh yeah, because that's gonna go over to the motor. Oh, that's that big rod that goes through there. And does that go in front? I don't think so. Ooh, maybe that goes in front. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, that totally fits. Okay, so stay. All right. So I'm guessing this is the big weird rod that goes through the whole thing. Now this is corroded and not very pleasant. So frankly, what I'm gonna do to make this not be a disaster, and this doesn't even look like it's the proper thing, they're using a nut as a spacer. I'm gonna see how this fits. And if I even wanna use it, I'm going to smear it in synthetic grease so it won't corrode anymore. And you're not gonna see it. Actually, you might see it. Darn it, I'm gonna have to paint that. That's kind of annoying. So that'll go through there like that. Yeah. Okay, so the only reason I'm gonna paint it is because you can see it right there. And since everything is nicely painted black the way it should be, you don't want one random rusty looking thing. So I'm gonna take this out for now, clean it, shoot it with Rust-Oleum. I am gonna find the correct bolt so that'll hold on, and also try to find the stuff to hold this oil cooler on. So next scene. Okay, you guys, so I discovered something. When I was putting the framework on, there wasn't a lot of room between it and the headers because I already tightened up the headers. And when I started bringing the oil cooler up in place to try to get the special bolts with their sleeves to go back in place into the weld nuts of it, I couldn't make it fit, and it's touching the headers. And I'm like, okay, I know the Vance and Hines like don't really fit that well, but that's way too much, doesn't make any sense. So I realized I've got to have to try to cheat it a little bit. So I loosened up all the flange bolts, the work I did there and how it's sealed, which is frustrating. And I just went like that, and then boom, the header fit differently. So I tightened it up with it being down here, not in the proper position, and that caused everything else not to fit. So if you see that right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm leaving that loose so that I can just, again, push it up and out of the way, and hopefully now get the oil cooler attached to the subframe all right, and all the bolts and everything in. So if you wanna come in real close and look at this here, you can see how that is. Come on, so you can see right in here. See my bolt, and it's got that shaft because there's a rubber bushing so that the vibration isn't going to the oil cooler and trying to crack it. So I'm trying to get this started with my fingers, as you can see. And then I'll come over here to the other side, which is gonna be tricky with the camera up in my business. Get out of there. Okay, no sweat. Good, that's started. So I've got the subframe hanging from here and everything's all right. So I'm gonna come back to this, and now I'm gonna re-snug down the headers. Frankly, tell you what, I'm not gonna snug the headers. I'm gonna go ahead right now and get the muffler and that pipe and kind of put it in place. And this is just a Vance and Hine. I just cleaned it up real nice. I masked off the tip and I painted the rest of the thing black, even over the logo, just kind of blacked it out. And this is just basically a slip fit. The bike's already really loud and it probably leaks a little bit, so it's not that big a thing. All right, now where was the hanger? So, yeah, that's gonna be fine. Let me, there was a bracket that held a hanger and bolt on, and that's what these guys are. I'm gonna have to clean them up, maybe shoot a little paint on. Here's my bracket for that to fit. So, I just wanna look at it carefully. I'm assuming this thing hung from something. I'm kind of assuming it bolted on there. It seems to fit like crap. Maybe that has to slide off a little further. Boy, that doesn't go on a lot, does it? Comes up here. Okay. And then that will go there. Not real keen about that. This is sort of the small disappointment about working on old stuff. Because you know this was like sort of stuck together, like back in the day. And then it corroded and it got old, and then you took it apart, and then you tried to make it nice, and then you're trying to put this like nice old stuff back together. That just does not fit. God. All right, I'm gonna come back to this one. There was so much blood. So I was putting the heat shielding material in here, I was wrapping it around. And what I like to do is use safety wire because the self-adhesive stuff isn't good enough. Once it starts getting a little hot, it'll peel. So I use 3 pieces of safety wire and then I roll the edge. But when I was getting it, I was under here like this and I started pinching it like this. And these things are sharp. And it's funny because this thing bled enough and it just like slices going in. I don't know if you can see that, the redness for the first ½ inch. Yeah, that's all blood. So that was a surprise and I didn't like it. I heard a lot, and I'm sorry you missed it because I know you would have enjoyed that. You internet people. And so, yeah, okay. I'm gonna put the screen on, but got this subframe on, it's good to go. This subframe is on, it holds the top of the radiator and the gauges. The gauges are bolted in place. The gauges were a pretty big priority, so they're not flopping around and getting banged up. You gotta be careful of that with the restoration. It's easier to leave them sort of in place and on, but they're also delicate and you don't wanna trash them, so. You know, it's running the thin line between being lazy and efficient, like risk assessment, which is funny because I've been thinking about this. So people have been talking to me about my YouTube channel. I'll be like, Casey, you're the one guy that seems like he's exactly the same in real life as he is on the camera. And that is vastly true, which is telling not of the quality of this YouTube channel, but of frankly my laziness because I just don't have time to act. And my accents are annoying anyway. So if I'm just real and go on camera and do it in one take, you guys like it, and I don't have to try that hard. I just have to be me. So I guess you guys are getting what you paid for. Okay, so the exhaust slides on well, and what I did is I slid it on the distance that I want so it seals up better and it's a nice strong thing. You don't want your exhaust to only go on like a 1/4 inch. But, and now that I remember this bracket, come on and take a look close. I've got it, it's at extreme-most position and clocked so that it should fit up. But as you can see, it is a long way away from hitting this. Clearly when I took it apart, I forgot that they probably did it sort of redneck and just used one of them. So I'm gonna have to cut that bracket and weld something that comes up to here. It's important to use both of the bolts where it mounts to the muffler, because if you only put 1 bolt at the muffler and 1 bolt up here, what's going to happen is it's going to kind of get loose and it's going to try to walk itself over like this, and the muffler's going to slide over and it's going to be a disaster. But if you have 2, it can't turn on you. So that's the importance of having the 2 bolts at your muffler and then the 1 point up here. So I'm going to have to make that bracket, make it a little better. Not a big deal. Went ahead and bolted on the rear fender, and this is an example, if you come here and look at this, of just how just a little bit of effort as you start to put it together. It looks like $1,000,000. I haven't polished this reflector yet, but this was all nicely shot. I painted this and this, and when the license plate is on here and that's polished, it's just going to look like $1,000,000. The other thing I did is just give a little squirt of WD-40 on some pivoting points, maybe where they started to corrode, and some bolts and things going in, just so it's nice. I also shot just a touch of WD-40 on electrical connections. WD-40 was originally designed for just that, keeping the water out of the connections for early guided missiles. Stands for Water Displacement Formula 40, if I'm not mistaken. So doing that, this is an older bike, and you know, when you're doing something like this, you have to know when to draw the line. How far do you want to take this? I mean, clearly I could have dismantled this whole thing and sandblasted and powder coated the whole frame, but you have to ask yourself why. It's okay, it looks fine, we cleaned it up, and it's going to be covered in bodywork, and I'm going to ride it. So that's just it. There's what I'm saying is, to all you young people that are building something out there, what are your intended purpose? And where is the diminishing returns of your build or your restoration? How far do you really want to take it? This is not going to Pebble Beach. I'm not some magical rich guy that's throwing way too much money into restoration. I want a really beautiful bike that rides great, is safe, and is really enjoyable. And that's what we're doing. And I'm also doing it this way because I want to show you all that you can build something great for not a ton of money in your original investment, as well as your parts and materials, as long as you invest in some tools and you use intelligent practices, you can build it yourself. So this motorcycle, all said and done, I'm probably gonna have $3,500 in it in parts and materials in the original bike. There's no way in heck I would sell it for that, of course, because experienced labor is worth quite a bit more than that, and I do have a lot of time in it. So frankly, if you wanted to go out and buy a Top Gun, GPZ900 that was nice, you know, you'd probably be lucky to buy one for $6,000 or $7,000. And that guy probably took a loss on buying it. I would expect it to be more in a $10,000 range or something like that. And frankly, I would not let this bike go for less than that because I know how much time and expertise and money would go into it normally. So even though I was able to do it reasonably, you know, I'm banking on professional experience of many years to do that, to show you all how you can do a build of your own rather than just paying for somebody to do it. If you can do that, great, and enjoy it no less, but I think that's important. Come on over here, let me show you what I've done while we wrap up this episode. And the next one we'll be putting the bodywork on. There was just so much to do, and it really gets takes up time. Obviously, got the oil cooler mounted, got the heat shrink on here. Headers are on, everything's nice and cinched down. Got the subframe here mounted with the gauges, everything's great. Got the subframe mounted here. This is the hardware that's gonna start holding the bodywork on. Everything is tightened up nicely. The radiator is in place, and I have the fan attached. You can't see it, but the radiator fan in there is plastic. It comes relatively close to the header. And I'm thinking that if this thing was stopped in one position and some idiot was revving it and the fan wasn't running yet, it got hot and started kind of like melt the edge of the blades a little bit. So I trimmed them and it'll be just fine. Make sure it works. I of course cleaned and refinished the screen here. So that looks real nice. You're gonna see that. And in the future, I'll be doing the brake lines. And I do have to get a new radiator coolant temperature sensor. It's on the other side. That'll take me a little bit of time in the oil line. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish it up pretty much like this because it rides and it's good. It's also winter. Go for a ride with it. And then in the spring, when it starts getting nicer, I'll go ahead and order the oil lines and brake lines and put them on to make it really good. We'll do an episode there, but let's finish it up. So next episode, we're gonna put bodywork on and it's gonna be 95% complete. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I hope you'll come back. And I hope you enjoyed me getting dirty and saying silly things and poking holes in my finger, building the Top Gun Maverick Kawasaki Ninja GPZ900. That was a silly voice. Anyway, hope you guys will like, comment, and of course subscribe. See you next time.